My name is Adam Donnan. I'm the Chief Executive of the Institution of Environmental Sciences. And I do a few other kind of non-exec things like chairing the Science Council and have some involvement with the Gatsby Foundation in their work in technical education. So I'm very honoured to be invited to speak first today and give some context to the day. And you're going to hear a lot from people far more knowledgeable than me about the skills agenda today. But I thought I would give some thoughts and make a few kind of provocative statements to get people thinking. Some of this presentation is based on surveying that we did with our IES members, some from some reports that are floating out there, and I will reference those at the end, and I'm sure Bex will circulate the slides afterwards, so all the links will be available. And I've just added some of my own reflections from working in the sector. And it may be that I contradict some of the opinions of today's speakers, and I'm likely to be proven wrong in the longer run on a number of things I'm going to say, but the purpose really of this presentation is to get us thinking about some of the issues surrounding net zero. So I'm very pleased that SEED is holding this event, as along with technology changes, I believe that the transition to green skills is one of the mega trends that is set to transform the economy and workforce over the next few decades. And to overcome a series of crises that society is facing, both in environmental terms and some kind of social crises and health crises as well, we are going to have to retool society in a process that's only really analogous in history with the Industrial Revolution, and be able to build the capacity to manage this transformation and to accelerate and validate this process. We're going to need a knowledgeable, diverse, trusted, skilled, and engaged environmental science profession, and skills are a big part of that. Having said that, though, net zero will be transformative, but it won't affect every job. I always underline that we need to resist the hyperbole around this. Inevitably, there'll be a small number of change agents and visionaries within sectors who will drive change in their respective industries. But the majority of people will actually keep on doing what they're doing, just with different materials and tools and working within different constraints. A builder will still need to be a builder and will largely use the same tools. They may just be using different materials. And we've heard it once today, and we'll hear it lots more times, I'm sure. But personally, I've never really liked the language of every job will be a green job. It feels to me a little bit like being in the 1970s and recognizing the rise of health and safety and confidently predicting that by 2020, every job will be a health and safety job. Awareness will rise around environmental issues, but it won't be the primary prism through which people will see their job. What we'll see is the normalization of designing and operating within greenhouse gas emission constraints, either eliminating those entirely or paying a cost associated with paying for some sort of carbon sink. But I believe that it will still be the environmental profession that will be driving change. And sometimes that kind of language of every job's a green job, I think, slightly diminishes the environmental profession and the key role that it's going to play over the coming 50 years. That is kind of backed up by a report that's hot off the press, a Climate Change Committee report that was published yesterday on a net zero workforce. And it concluded from its study that about 60% of the workforce net zero adjustments will be very peripheral to what they do. And it's only around a fifth of workers that will see the largest impact. Those that are currently employed in sectors that will have a core role in delivering net zero. Additionally, 7% of the workforce will be redirected into new sectors, for example, oil and gas workers transitioning into offshore wind, with an additional 9 to kind of 12% of growth within new jobs, and only a small number of eliminated jobs, is their predictions. I also think that net zero could alleviate other environmental societal crisis, but there is also the potential that it could exacerbate them. And I guess it's kind of the nature of modern journalism and reporting, but you get kind of push lots of articles that talk about net zero in different ways, and I'm partly enthused, partly despair at the number of kind of co-benefits that net zero seems to be coupled with. And there on the slide, you can see articles that I have read recently of coupling net zero with a whole set of other crises. And the time pressures associated with dealing with climate change means that we are going to have this retooling of society, which is going to fundamentally change the way in which we live our lives. And path dependency and technological lock-in mean that there is a window of opportunity to address some of these other co-dependencies and co-benefits at the same time. And this is a fantastic marketing tool for net zero, and means that we can pull funding from various sources, drawing down funding from health, for example. But it's also not difficult to see how a badly designed transition might make some of these problems much worse. I think there's a danger of a clean but not green scenario, where biodiversity could further diminish in a rush to adopt clean technologies. And you see that in things like underwater mining for rare earths. Also, I think unless things are properly planned, it might make worse that kind of north-south divide, because when you look at it, currently a lot of green jobs are concentrated in London and the southeast, whereas what's classified as brown jobs are in Wales, Scotland, and the north of England. So unless these are addressed on a systemic level, there is the possibility that net zero, far from solving some of these crises, may make things worse. Sorry, this slide sticking somewhere else. I didn't realize I had animation on it. So a myopic take on net zero strategies will exclude those opportunities to realize co-benefits and tackle other pollutants at the same time. And we'll all know as environmental scientists that addressing one pressure in the system does not address them all. And we do need to address the system. And really make sure that within our courses and our approach to work that we're championing that systems approach, but recognizing that net zero is the wedge, and we can't always let the perfect get in the way of the good. So ticking every box of every crisis every time may not quite fit with the time horizons that we're working with. So a sense of kind of realism, I think, is needed, and a recognition of those time pressures. I've also said it won't automatically be the case that net zero creates more jobs than it destroys. This very much sits in one of my provocative statements. In the UK, the net zero strategy, in the UK's net zero strategy, the government plans to create 2 million new jobs in the green economy by 2030. In yesterday's report from the Climate Change Committee, it suggested that there's potential for the net zero transition to create more jobs that are lost, as you saw on the earlier graphic. And it thought that between 135,000 and 725,000 net new jobs could be created by 2030 in low carbon sectors, such as building, retrofit, renewable energy generation, and the manufacture of electric vehicles. So why I put that slightly cynical statement on my slide is that partly driven by the government's record on building retrofit, which have been abysmal. In EV, there's been a huge gap between ambition and delivery, and numerous setbacks, including a collapse in British Volt. Renewables may have been a bit of a better story, although you're seeing kind of recent problems emerge with the national grid and hooking up to new renewable projects. And I think that really highlights a lack of proper sectoral planning and joined up thinking around this. So there is the potential for industries such as oil and gas to be stranded if there's not a proper transition plan. And why I put that slightly provocative statement up there is because analysis shows that employers and regional authorities don't really understand the skills required to reach the target. They're going to need support from further and higher education providers. Politicians will need support and encouragement from the populations, and we'll need all of the regions working together to prevent a destruction of jobs that outweighs the creation of new jobs. This very much kind of plays into the idea of a just transition. And there's a good piece of analysis in a report from the Resolution Foundation, which examines how the UK might transition towards net zero, and it classifies jobs as either being green or brown, and talks about 1.3 million brown workers who are most exposed to the impacts of the transition, as they are in the most, as they're prevalent in emission-intense sectors, so things like HGV drivers, energy plant operators. And the other key group affected are the 4.3 million workers in green jobs. Some of these are likely to grow, including things like wind turbine engineers, environmental and conservation professionals, while others will see their jobs change, including technicians and managers of various types. And the calls for brown to green job moves are very common, and you'll hear lots of that today. But the report does urge caution around this because it's actually quite rare for workers to switch from brown to green jobs, largely due to the significant differences between the tasks that green and brown workers complete. And you'll see that there on the slide. So that's another risk that we need to be aware of. So system change is difficult and it's very challenging to centrally plan, but there's no doubt a greater intervention and planning by government will be needed, mixing up market mechanisms with intervention. And a systems approach requires movement from all different parties that have an effect on that system. So we need rapid deployment of research funding in the right areas, rapid deployment of training provision, a faster moving and more responsive regulatory environment, and the release of public and private sector funding around net zero. NERC needs to get much better at interdisciplinary engagement, focus around grand challenges and greater impact. And I think we probably need a more diverse ecosystem of funders working in this area. Universities and FE colleges are going to have a dual role in giving people the right skills, but also undertaking research around a transition to net zero. And yeah, recent efforts by universities and by technical education reform have made education providers much more responsive. But there's going to be a lot of unexpected bumps in the road, and we need to be able to rapidly respond to that. So training providers are going to need to continue on that journey about being very responsive. And regulation and the way in which we do regulation is also going to have to be changed to be responsive, fast moving, but to fit into an overall clear direction of travel to be able to give businesses the certainty that they need to invest. And yesterday's Climate Committee report said that government has policy levers at its disposal to support workers during the transition to net zero. It does not need to intervene in every sector of the economy, but clearer plans are needed to harness the potential of the transition and to manage its risks. Handoff approach will not work. And I took this from a very good MMU report that I referenced at the end of the slides that talks about some of the barriers and challenges around a net zero transition. Also want to add that soft skills are important, but they're not going to replace the need for strong technical skills. I put this in because it frustrates me greatly to read some of the reports on net zero that will talk about 10 skills for a net zero future, and they're all about kind of communication and management and soft skills. And awareness raising will be important and implementation will be important, but I think we will quite rapidly move to a problem solving and innovation stage where STEM skills will be the core important skills around kind of problem solving and dealing with some of those kind of knotty and sticky elements of greenhouse gas emissions within particular sectors. The good news is that when we surveyed our members back in 2021, a good proportion of them believed that they did have the skills to support net zero ambitions, but around a third of them didn't. So there's still more work to be done. When we asked them the kind of types of skills that they thought might be most needed to achieve net zero, the top one was about multidisciplinary teamwork skills. So a big focus, I think, for environmental professionals is going to be about how do we interact with a whole set of different professionals we may not have done in the past, and have that real kind of multidisciplinary approach that allows the environmental science to be injected into lots and lots of different areas of the economy. Carbon literacy as the next most important element, and then technical skills and knowledge being the third most important, and innovation, and then the ability to kind of implement that through management and strategic skills and digital skills. So, a real kind of range of different skills we're going to need as an environmental profession to take some of these net zero challenges forward. Here's some of the words that came up in terms of the kind of soft skills that our members felt that they would need, and then some of the more technical skills. So a range of different things that we might consider embedding further into our programs. So to conclude, why do skills matter? It's about building aspiration and a just transition within society. How do we use skills as a way to shift the whole community and sector aspiration, increase that aspiration and the rapidity of the transition? A recognition that the economy is changing, it has to change, and a moral obligation to ensure that the community is given a just and fair chance to be able to succeed within that economy. And the multiple benefits that we can champion around the net zero transition, which should, if well designed, include social, economic, and environmental benefits. Early adoption will lead to advantages both for the UK and for students above other markets and other professionals if they've got this skill set. And we all have a role in helping these skills to flourish, with at the heart of it a concept of a just transition, community involvement, developing training standards. What comes through very, very clearly in all of the reports that I've read is the need for training provision to be planned and managed actively, and we can't just rely on demand-led training. We have to lead the way on some of this and recognise what's coming down the line. And I think the growth of apprenticeships and other parts of technical education have a key role to play in this. So, as I say, these are the links that I based my presentation on, and hopefully Bex can circulate those afterwards so that people can read some of those in depth. But I'm very much looking forward to the discussions from today, and hope that's framed some of them for the rest of the day.